Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod. Target CEO Brian Cornell on prices and an earnings report that hit the bullseye.
We reduced prices on over 5,000 items, those items that are most frequently purchased, and I think the consumers recognize that.
And how Target's used lower corporate tax rates to invest $50 billion.
Would you urge policymakers not to raise corporate taxes?
Absolutely.
Politics. The DNC's Chicago takeover. Congressman Josh Gottheimer on the vibes from the Kamala Harris campaign.
I want to see more specifics overall in totality, how that's going to affect hardworking families. But I like what we're hearing.
Plus, the Fed's annual Jackson Hole gathering on deck. A bump in the road for banning non-competes. And is the housing market's chill about to warm up?
I'm like Hillbilly Elegy, Part 2.
It's Wednesday, August 21st. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernen.
Here. Hi, I'm here.
Hi, we're here.
I'm looking at this. Preparing.
Andrew is off today. We do have a lot of news that's happening.
Ahead of this week's Fed symposium in Jackson Hole, Fed Governor Michelle Bowman said she remains cautious about any shift in policy because of the upside risks of inflation. She warned that overreacting to any single data point could jeopardize the progress that's already been made. She's been one of the most hawkish policy members at the central bank. We're going to hear plenty more from policymakers this week, starting with tomorrow with Kansas City Fed President Jeff Schmid. But what could influence the entire tone of Jackson Hole is something that the BLS does every year. It goes back and looks March to March. And we don't know what the revision is going to be, but once a year, the March payrolls level is adjusted to a more accurate but less timely data source called the Quarterly Census of Employment and Wages, which is based on something that takes longer to figure out, but gives you a more accurate view. And at this point, up to 1 million U.S. jobs could vanish in the revision.
Wow.
So at this point, now people are saying Goldman Sachs thinks it'll be maybe less. JP Morgan sees a decline of about 360,000. Goldman Sachs indicates it could be as large as 1 million. But we have in our head that we've been adding an average of 240,000 per month. Mm-hmm. This would lower it to something like 158,000 down from 242,000. But you can imagine
that's a big deal.
You can imagine what the Fed, how that would inform the Fed's both discussions and actions at Jackson Hole. So that's 10 a.m. We're going to get that number. But the conspiracy theorists are like, really? 1 million jobs that every month where it was, better than expected, better than expected, and now we find out, 1 million jobs over 12 months, that's almost 90,000, over the average.
You talked to Leisman about any of these things. There are better sources of data. He's probably on his way up to Jackson Hole, I guess. But there are lots of questionable data sources and better sources that he's been trying to tap for a long time, whether that be ADP, when you're actually looking at payrolls over a very large swath of the country. But he's looking for better data sources all the time.
We all are. And we're not really sure. The labor market has looked so strong, but the consumer has looked like there were some cracks.
That's what we heard from Lowe's yesterday, Home Depot last week. We're going to hear from Target today.
And the sell-off we saw in the stock market a month ago, which is now a memory, and the VIX spiking up to 50, that's all the way back down. So all those recession fears are gone.
There's no sector that's more than 10% from its all-time highs right now. If you look,
some of them are back, but for a while that sell-off that we saw, whatever it was a little correction. But that was on recession fears or hard landing fears or the idea that the soft landing wasn't a given. Now we're back to totally soft landing.
Back to Goldilocks?
Yeah, we're back to Goldilocks. And we still might be. This doesn't mean we're not, but this could mean that the Fed is going to be much more comfortable beginning a cutting cycle.
Yeah, cutting for a reason. In the meantime, a federal judge has ruled that the FTC cannot enforce its near total ban on non-compete agreements that was set to take effect early next month. U.S. District Judge Ada Brown, who was appointed by President Trump in 2019, said that the FTC lacked the authority to enact the ban, which she called unreasonably overbroad without a reasonable explanation. A federal judge in Pennsylvania had previously sided with the FTC, so that rule is likely headed for appellate review. Non-compete agreements have become increasingly common in the United States. There's an estimated 20% of the U.S. workforce that's subject to them. The FTC said that the provisions harm workers while employers claim that they help protect their investments in employees. We know how these have been abused in pretty horrific ways in some situations. You walk into a salon, they make you sign something before you've ever had a job there that says you can't work in a 30-mile radius after that. So it's pretty onerous.
You take this job
you don't own me.
and shove it. I'm pushing back against the man or the woman.
I ain't working here no
or
more.
The woman.
My baby don't.
Johnny Paycheck.
Quit all the reasons.
Did you know that's who?
Is that who wrote that?
That's who sung that.
That probably was not his original.
Johnny Paycheck. Probably not his real name.
Yeah.
Toll Brothers, the home builder, reporting record quarterly home sales, also raised its outlook for the full year. Earnings and revenue for the quarter also topped estimates. The company delivered more than 2,800 homes. I understand what they mean. They finished building.
Yes.
I don't think they're moving them around.
There are some of those homes that are built and are delivered. This
there
is
are
not the
some
type
RVs.
Toll Brother
Where's
makes.
Greco? Is Greco?
It's not just RVs. They're
no, it's the double wide. Did some of our producers?
Not just that either. There are, but Toll Brothers is not that.
No. Got the double wide with the above ground pool.
Clayton Homes makes it pretty cool.
They do.
Like
They do.
prefab homes that are kind of
am-
amazing.
I'm from the west side of town in Ohio. Okay,
Well, I know if you have a plot,
I know
you can get
full
for like
well. These are my.
$150,000 you can get a really nice.
I'm like Hillbilly Elegy, Part 2. Up from 11%, same area, by the way, Middletown. As a year ago. Grew up in an orphanage, adopt all these things. Okay, I've got School of Hard Knocks. CEO Doug Yearley, really playing this up now.
And you're afraid of penguins.
I'm afraid of penguins because of those nuns. That my food came from a bottle all along, and I think that scars you. You know what I mean? A little bit?
My food came from a bottle, too.
Yeah, that's right. CEO Doug Yearley said he's optimistic. We talk about it a lot, don't we? He's optimistic.
Not my children's.
I don't want to know.
You already know.
I know. Oh, my God, yes, I'm scarred. I can't unsee that thing. What a contraption. Demand's going to remain solid through the end of this year and into 2025. I think I brushed against it.
No. You were giving me grief at one point, so I threw a bag of milk at you.
Yeah, you did.
Afterwards.
That's all right. My coffee was good.
Cheese will be next.
Still to come on Squawk Pod, Target CEO Brian Cornell. The retailer lowered prices for consumers and reported its first quarter of growth in about a year. He's urging other stores to follow his lead, especially when it comes to capital spending.
Since 2017, when the corporate taxes were reduced, we've spent close to $50 billion of capital, building new stores across the country, remodeling over 1,000 stores,
Would that
building
have been
DCs.
less if it was 28%?
Well, it certainly gave us a chance to accelerate investments.
You're listening to Squawk Pod from CNBC. Today with Joe Kernen and Becky Quick.
Good morning. Welcome back to Squawk Box, live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square.
Target reporting quarterly results just in the last hour. It's now up by 14%. And joining us right now is Target's chairman and CEO, Brian Cornell. Brian, the earnings very strong. $2.57 a share versus the $2.18 the street was expecting in your previous guidance of $1.95. Revenue beat expectations. Comps were up 2%. Traffic was up 3%. You said this was going to be a quarter of growth, and it was.
Well, it's been a good day for the Target brand and a great day for the Target team. And I think we checked a lot of boxes today. If you look at the P&L, and you reported it early this morning, we said Q2 was the time we'd get back to growth, and that would be driven by traffic. Traffic up 3% was a really important marker for us. But overall comps plus 2%, stores were positive. We saw acceleration in digital. Digital growth led by Drive Up and our Target Circle 360 delivery to home. Those were up over 14%. And from a overall performance standpoint, for op income rate to get back to 6%. People have been waiting for that for a while.
6.4% actually.
And to see EPS up over 40%. I feel really good about the progress we're making in the quarter.
So what happened? What was the key? Was it traffic?
Well, I think it was Target being Target. Really getting back to leveraging our great national brand partnerships, our own brands. Some of those unique partnerships we put together really came together in the quarter. And we were very focused on delivering value in this environment. And we made a big commitment. We reduced prices on over 5,000 items, those items that are most frequently purchased. And I think the consumers recognize that. But we've driven great traffic into our stores and visits to our site, great value, great newness. And I think we really hit the mark in the quarter.
When you look at the 5,000 items you cut prices on, were those the items that were showing up in every basket? Or can you tell how linked that was to the traffic
Absolutely.
increases?
And those are the most frequently purchased items. But we also know, Becky, when you visit our store, you come in for those household essentials, for food and beverage, a big part of our business is the and. Then you're shopping for apparel. Apparel was a standout performer in the quarter, up 3%. Within parts of apparel, our all-in-motion performance line grew in the mid-teens, a real standout performer. And we're taking share in those spaces. I was actually in New York a few weeks ago with investors, and I had a number of PMs mention to me, Brian, I only buy all-in-motion now. I used to buy a national brand, but the quality, the design, and the value is so good, I have to buy it. And they buy it for their kids. I had another PM talk about the fact that for my kids, the design, the quality, but the value was so good. I'm saving 60 or 70% versus a national brand. That's all I buy. So when we get that combination right of great design, being on trend, and value, good things happen.
So we're looking at a consumer that's been facing some pressure from what we've heard in a lot of other sectors, from a lot of other stores, from a lot of other companies. What do you see with the consumer right now?
Well, the three of us have talked about it quite a bit over the last couple of years. We continue to see an incredibly resilient consumer. Now, they've been facing the pressure of inflation and rising interest rates. They're continuing to look for value. But we've seen a pretty steady consumer environment. I think part of it is we still have a very strong labor market. But a consumer who's managing their budget carefully, they're looking for value, and we're delivering value right now.
We have seen some cracks around the edges in some places, whether that's consumer concerns. The Fed survey earlier this week that showed that there were concerns about whether they'd still be employed down the road. Other places where it looks like maybe the jobs number is going to be revised pretty heavily. What do you see? What can you tell us about whether those concerns are something we should worry about?
Well, I think the consumer today is going to continue to look for value. Over the balance of this year, I think they're going to be seeking value for everyday essentials as they shop for food and beverage. But as they start to get back into discretionary spending, they're looking for value. I mean, for us to be up 3% in apparel and starting to see some green shoots in other parts of our home and hardlines category tells us consumers are still shopping, but they're on a budget. They're looking for value, and we deliver great quality and value. They're shopping at Target.
Have you boosted any of your profits from gouging on prices yet, Brian? And how prevalent and pervasive do you think that was in terms of causing the recent 40-year highs in inflation?
Joe, again, we talked about the fact we reduced prices on 5,000 items, but value's in our DNA. You go back to the brand promise, expect more, pay less. It's what we do each and every day.
You haven't done that. Do you think it's done? Do you know anyone who has? Any of your competitors? Yeah.
So I'll put my retail hat on for a second. I mean, you two talk to industry leaders in every different sector. Is there a more competitive space than retail? No. Big multinationals,
or
local
lower,
retailers.
Or lower margins, or lower overall margins.
Right. We're celebrating this morning the fact that we delivered a margin rate of over 6%. You talk to other CEOs who are delivering op income of 20, 30,
tech
40,
companies.
and 50%.
Yeah, tech
so
companies.
We're in a penny business.
Well, should we go after them?
Well, I think from a retail standpoint, though, you've got physical stores, you've got digital stores, you can shop socially. People can pull up their phone like Becky and check the price of milk at Target and other retailers.
She does that too. So does Andrew.
So it is a penny business, and it's a very competitive space, and we provide the value consumers are looking for.
Can I ask you one other thing?
Of course you can.
You sure? We talked about it a little. I'm sort of crazy. I think corporate tax rate should be zero. I do. I want to compete globally as well as we can. We can find other ways to do it, to raise taxes somewhere else. But I want our corporations to beat all their global competitors and have all the money to innovate and do everything that they do. So we're now hearing it was 34. We went to 21. Most people thought that was too far. Back to 28 would be a good move. Would that hurt the corporate sector if we went back to 28?
Joe, from where I sit, Target's one of these great American companies. All of our 2,000 stores are right here in the United States. We employ over 400,000 team members that are mostly here in the U.S. And we're a full fare payer. When it was 35, we paid 35%. When it dropped to 22, we paid 22.
They say no one does that.
Well,
yeah.
We did. But more importantly, Joe, when the taxes were reduced, we put our capital to work. Since 2017, when the corporate taxes were reduced, we've spent close to $50 billion of capital. Building new stores across the country, remodeling over 1,000 stores,
Would that
building
have been
DCs.
less if it was 28%?
Well, it certainly gave us a chance to accelerate investments. But we put the dollars back into our business. It's helped us grow since 2017. Our top line almost $40 billion.
What have your
and
wages
I think it's the
grown
way
since
America
then,
should work.
Right. What have your wages grown since that time?
Our wages have gone up dramatically, Becky, as you know. And across the country right now, we put capital into stores and remodels. We built new distribution centers. That creates jobs at Target, but also all those construction workers benefit from the fact that we're building again, and we put those dollars to work. So I think those corporate taxes, we're an example of a company that put it back into the business, created more jobs, grew the top line.
So what happens if it goes back to 28%? What would the impact be?
We're still going to invest, but we'll have to think about how we pace it. But I think our example is one that other companies should look at.
Would you urge policymakers not to raise corporate taxes?
Absolutely. I think we've got those examples, Joe, of saying we're going to put the capital back to work. It's going to create more jobs. We took care of our team members. We raised wages. We improved benefits. We gave them debt-free educational assistance. And we grew the top line. And I think we benefited shareholders. But we created jobs because we had more flexibility and more dollars to invest. It grew the top line, but it created jobs across America. And we think that's a model others can follow.
You don't do anything based on capital gains rates, do you? I mean, would that be detrimental to Target if capital gains?
It's not something on the top of our list.
Right. This is more important.
Yeah. What about share buybacks?
Well, Becky, this quarter, we've improved our balance sheet. We generated a lot of cash. We continue to pay our dividend. We continue to invest in our business, but we've started to buy back shares.
Yeah. To go through some of those things too. Now, you are a Minnesota company, and your governor, Walz, is now tapped as Kamala Harris's running mate. What is your relationship with Governor Walz? What would you say along those lines?
Well, obviously, we're based in Minnesota. We've got a relationship with the governor, as we do with other elected officials. I've been in his office. He's been in ours. We've got a good working relationship, and we'll be watching carefully as new policies come forward.
Mm-hmm. Back to what you see with inflation. We're talking a lot about how the consumer has weakened, how the economy has weakened, and that is giving the Federal Reserve the potential to lower rates. A big meeting this week where they're going to be talking about some of these things out in Jackson Hole. Where do you see inflation right now? Is that still a problem? It's still a little higher than the 2% target.
Well, certainly in categories like food and beverage, since 2019, prices are up 20 or 25%, but they've started to stabilize. Mm-hmm. So I think anything that the Fed can do to benefit the consumer as we go into the holiday season, we'll certainly applaud that.
Okay. Brian, I want to thank you very much for being with us. Take a look at those shares, up by more than 13% this morning. You are here in good times and bad, and we appreciate it.
Always good to see you. Thanks.
Good to see you in good
times.
Thank you.
Take care now.
Thank you.
Next on Squawk Pod.
Hello, Chicago!
The Democratic National Convention with a high-energy day 2 in Chicago. New Jersey Congressman Josh Gottheimer is on the ground there, and he says the speakers, like the Obamas, are striking a tone of unity.
What we're hearing here, I think, is a very positive tone, bringing the country together and focused on what we can do to make life more affordable for people, which I think is what the proposals on childcare are all about. Housing, we certainly need to address housing issues.
Welcome back to Squawk Pod.
Kamala Harris! I want what's best for Indiana, and that means electing Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris!
Here's Becky Quick.
All All right, Barack and Michelle Obama headlined last night's Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Megan Cassella is there, and she joins us right now with the highlights. And Megan, you've had some really late nights and some really early mornings, and we appreciate your being up for us. What happened?
Hey, Becky. Yes, good morning. It is an early morning here, sort of a morning after energy, I've been calling it, after what was a late night and a very energetic night at day 2 of the Democratic National Convention. The official programming last night was the roll call, the ceremonial roll call, in which each state's delegation got to cast their votes for Kamala Harris. And they made a party out of it. There was a DJ on stage. Each state played a song in the background. And when they got to Georgia, the rapper Lil Jon came out and sang his song, Turn Down for What, and then led the crowd in a chant of "We're not going back." But then, as you mentioned, the Obamas were the headliners at the end of the evening. Michelle Obama came out and said that hope is making a comeback, with sort of a direct shot at Republicans who have been criticizing the Democratic ticket for their focus on joy and optimism. And then she took on some of President Trump's recent comments on race. Take a listen.
His limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of 2 hardworking, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black. I want to know, who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
Then President Obama launched into a speech where he really celebrated Joe Biden and their friendship, his legacy. He spoke about how Harris is going to take on corporations. And he also shifted the blame a little bit. And he started talking the tone a little bit. And he started talking about something we haven't been hearing a lot of recently. He sort of talked about polarization. And then he made an appeal to members of the Democratic Party to listen to moderate and independent voters who may be trying to make up their minds about who to vote for. Here, let's listen in.
We need to remember that we've all got our blind spots and contradictions and prejudices, and that if we want to win over those who aren't yet ready to support our candidates, we need to listen to their concerns and maybe learn something in the process.
Now, President Trump is continuing to counter-program this week. He'll be in North Carolina today talking about national security, and his campaign is out with a statement early this morning calling night 2 of the convention angry, delusional, and devoid of any solutions. Becky?
Hey, Megan, Ken Chenault spoke last night, the former CEO of American Express. He was there as a business representative. What was his message?
Unlike her opponent, she knows the way not to build an advanced economy is a broad tariff that would only raise prices, hurt consumers and businesses, and cost jobs. She knows the way not to do it is to give people like me a tax cut when that money should be invested to grow the middle class. If you want to lead, you have to be willing to serve. Kamala Harris's vision for the economy serves us all.
Chenault had sort of an interesting speech. It was quick, but he tried to make this link between the economy and democracy. It's something that we've heard from some prominent Democrats in business or in tech. I'm thinking of Reid Hoffman here, where he says that the two are linked and that the reason he's supporting the Democratic ticket from a business leader perspective is because of that stability and democracy. He criticized some of Trump's policies on tariffs in particular, but his main message was this overarching view of the need for stability.
Okay. Megan, thank you.
No, I don't. I was a little bit chagrined that Michelle Obama didn't utter the words Joe Biden. And friendship between Joe and Barack, I don't know. It might be a little bit. I've been reading that maybe behind the scenes things aren't quite as rosy as they may have appeared, and that if Joe Biden blames anyone for having the rug pulled out from under him, it might be the Obamas.
Biden himself said on the stage the night before that he wasn't. It sounded like that was a rare where he ad-libbed it. I know.
Exactly.
But that's what these.
But behind the scenes, you read the scuttlebutt, and it was George Clooney said, "I'm going to pull," and Obama didn't stop him, and the rest is history. So there's a lot of smiles, a lot of hope and change.
That's what these conventions.
There's a lot of joy.
But that's what these conventions are for.
It's joyous. It's joyful.
Pep rally.
It's joyful.
It's a pep rally every time we do these.
It's joy.
I know. These are hard.
Joyful.
These are hard conventions to get through. Would you say 76
Tell me about it.
days?
Tell me about it.
76
No, I
days.
haven't. I actually haven't.
No, 76 days.
I can't stay up that late. I can't believe Joe made it to midnight.
Joining us right now from Chicago to talk taxes and more is New Jersey Congressman Josh Gottheimer. He co-chairs the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus. And Congressman, thank you for being with us today.
Hey, Becky.
All right, I've been looking forward to talking to you about this because I think it's been kind of interesting watching since last Friday what the campaign has done, Kamala Harris's campaign. They have put out a lot of more progressive policies, and it looks like it is really an effort to try and get out the vote, motivate voters who might not have shown up otherwise. But there were two ways that they could go, either try and get out the vote from the left or try and move towards pulling moderates in. I always think of you as being a moderate in the party, and I just wonder what you think of what we've seen so far this week.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Last night and this whole week, the energy here is incredible, first of all. And I think you see a lot of excitement. And I think it's across the board. Right? And I feel, frankly, as somebody who really believes in bringing both sides together, if you hear what they're saying, it's about unity, positive energy, and the fact that we got to bring the country together, and we need, and I think the vice president's been clear about this. She wants to represent everybody, Democrats and Republicans, when she's president of the United States. And if you look at what they proposed, both expanding the child tax credits and making childcare more affordable, housing starts, making sure we increase support for first-time home buyers and getting more houses built around our country and more support for renters, which of course right now with housing costs it's very expensive. We need to get more houses built. That's the kind of stuff that I think brings people together. And you know, the specifics are going to keep coming big. We'll see more tomorrow night. And I'm eager to hear more of what the vice president has to say.
I will point specifically to some of the policies that look a little populist or a lot populist. Things like price gouging, price controls potentially that have been thrown out as ideas for trying to tamp down inflation, which we've seen these things in the past not work. Getting back to the idea of taxing unrealized gains and standing behind that. Those sort of policies have been rolled out this week, and that certainly sets the business community on edge, trying to wonder. And you know, a lot of them are saying, why would you even say things like this when you basically should be saying, I'm not Joe Biden, I'm not Donald Trump, and keeping it at that. She's very intentionally taking a tack to the left, and I assume that has to be to try and get out the vote. Again, talking about some of those issues and looking at some of those things that will send the business community kind of looking askance and taking a few steps back.
Well, I think, well, first of all, on the talking about competition and standing up against price gouging is something that reaches out, I believe, to everybody. We saw very tough years after the pandemic with supply chain issues. But she didn't talk about. She was very clear about that. There's a huge difference between talking about competition and making sure that we address anti-competitive behavior and price controls, which obviously
the price margins are only 1-2%.
And Josh, you know that's not what caused the inflation. So, and for you to say it with a straight face, just it doesn't help your cause at all. You know.
No, but Joe, talking about as a capitalist, I believe in competition and making sure that there's actual competition. You got states.
Why didn't the corporations Why didn't the corporations gouge for 40 years if that's what caused it? How did it suddenly happen? They learned how to gouge 3.5 years ago, and it went to 40-year highs on inflation. And when you talk about unifying, being where you are, you may be unifying intra-DNC, but I can guarantee you what we're seeing in policies coming out are not unifying policies. And you must know that in terms of the populist.
But Joe,
they're not unifying to me. They're very divisive.
Well, I think we'd all agree that the other side has been clear about burning down the house and taking a much more extreme perspective. That's all I'm saying.
No, we can't all agree. I don't think we're going to have to agree to disagree, because I don't agree. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just making the point that I think standing up to anti-competitive behavior is not a bad thing.
Every statement begins with "we can all agree." Okay. No, we can't. No, we can't. That sounds like.
Okay, well, I'll say.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I'm saying my perspective, if that's better.
Yeah, go ahead, Congressman.
Go ahead. I'm saying my perspective on what people are speaking about and what we're hearing here, I think is a very positive tone, bringing the country together and focused on what we can do to make life more affordable for people, which I think is what the proposals on childcare are all about. Housing, we certainly need to address housing issues. You're building on nearly 16 million new jobs from this last administration and a lot of accomplishments, whether you're talking about supporting veterans, as you know, or the infrastructure legislation, the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, which we're very proud of to get done. So it's not just what happened, what we're proposing now. It's also, I think, building on years of great accomplishments over the last 4 years. And that's what you're seeing a lot of positive energy about.
Yeah, you know, we had this convention, we had the Republican convention, and obviously both of them are kind of pep rallies for each party to get going. Does it make your life more difficult as part of the Problem Solvers Caucus when we have stuff like this going on? Or are you guys able to get back to Washington and say there's still a lot of common ground between the two sides, even in an election year just coming out of both these conventions?
No, listen, I think there's going to, you look at what we're going forward. Next year, we've got a very big debate over the tax package, right? Because the 2017 tax bill expires. So there's going to be a lot of decisions that need to be made. I think no matter how this all turns out, you're going to have tightly controlled Congresses, right? I believe Democrats are going to win the House and Hakeem Jeffries is going to be Speaker. But either way, it's going to be a tight majority. Right, so we're going to have real debates about, obviously, things like SALT, which I believe, the cap is going to be expiring. So that's going to be a big debate. Obviously, I want to make sure that we lower taxes and remove the cap. That's a big issue. You've got R&D tax credit issues. You're going to have debates about where taxes are overall. And I'm going to be fighting for issues that, of course, matter to Jersey and trying to get those taxes down. So those are the kind of things we're going to have to come together about, have discussions about. And I think, Joe, those are the sort of things that I'm talking about. Those are the debates that we're going to have happen. So you're going to see both sides lay out specifics. Former President Trump, very thin on the specifics. All he's talked about so far is a 20% across the board tariff, which I think would be incredibly inflationary and have a big impact on hardworking families. But we want to see specifics, and I want to see specifics. We're going to see a lot more, I believe, tomorrow night from the vice president and in the weeks ahead. And that's where we can have this debate about the differences, right? Because right now, we haven't even heard from the vice president yet. And so I want to see more specifics overall in totality, how that's going to affect hardworking families. But I like what we're hearing in terms of childcare costs and affordability costs and housing. Those are the kind of issues that folks talk to me about all the time. And you know, we were talking last night. I was with law enforcement last night. We need to make sure we support law enforcement and firefighters and veterans. Those are the kind of policies that I think bring us together. And that's what I'm talking about. That positive uniting instead of dividing people up. Common sense over extremist policies. So that's what brings people together, and that's the kind of stuff I'm going to be talking about, Joe. And we're going to need to work together to get this stuff done.
No more defunding the police or getting rid of ICE or making it a civil offense across the board. No more of those nasty things that were proposed in the past. It's just all good unifying things.
No,
now.
and you heard former President Obama talk about that last night, right? And I think that's the messaging. And of course, Michelle Obama brought down the House. You know, listen to Joe. I'll send you that parts of his speech where he was talking about that specifically, because I think that's the kind of messaging.
He's not running, fortunately. All right.
Congressman Gottheimer, I want to thank you for joining us and for being
Joe, sorry, but we're going to build on what he was talking about, and that's the point. Joe,
thank you very much, Congressman Gottheimer. We appreciate it.
Thanks,
it's good
Becky.
to see you.
And that's the pod for today. Thanks for tuning in. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. You can tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern to get the smartest takes and analysis from our TV show right into your ears. Please follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. That's it. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.